Kayse, a simple question. Would you prefer an Islamic state in the States or the Christianized states to live in? There is no other options. I am so glad you asked me that question, because my answer is I refuse to answer that question. Because the reason that question is always posed in Western society, in the United States, is to villainize Islam. It is specifically built into Islamophobia. You know what? I'm not even going to use that word because I know that's triggering for a lot of people. The idea of Christianity being quote unquote better than Islam is built on premises that I fundamentally disagree with. First of all, that Western civilization should be, I'm going to give you all my full fucking attention for this. The idea that Western society is somehow better morally than any other iteration of civilization on this planet is fundamentally false. I do not adhere to it. Why? Because Western society is built on exploitation and the subjugation of entire peoples. The entirety of Western civilization is predicated on prospering and progressing based on the backs of other people, on the exploitation of indigenous peoples throughout the world, starting here in this country, in the United States, right? The indigenous people of this country. And then that wasn't enough. So they had to go overseas and bring people over here to subjugate them there through chattel slavery, through the African slave trade, right? So this idea of Western society somehow being the moral standard for the rest of the world is bullshit. That is already false. Second of all, a lot of the ways that Western society progressed and moved forward in human evolution had nothing to do with religion at all. In fact, it was the exact opposite. If you're not talking about morality, which, as I've just talked about, should not be propped up as better than the rest because it relied on immoral practices, right? Moving the concept of morality aside, the progress that a lot of people love to correlate with Western society, with the United States, with Europe, whatever, technologically speaking, I'm talking about the technology, the scientific advancements, have nothing to do with religion, have nothing to do with Christianity. In fact, it was the separation from Christianity through the Enlightenment and the rational scientific revolution. It was through the moving away from Christianity that we were able to get all of this technology, that we were able to have the scientific revolution, which brought about all of the industrial advances. So even on that front, the propping up of Western civilization still has nothing to do with Christianity. And it is not because we are Christianized or what the fuck ever you want to say. And so then we get to this question: would I prefer an Islamic state in the States or the Christianized states to live in? You then say there is no other option. False. There is another option, and this community is a testament to that. This community is proof of that. Okay? There is another option because we don't need religion. We don't need religion. Are you kidding me? We don't need religion. First of all, we don't need religion for morality or scientific advancement or the furthering of human society or to continue evolution or to bring about peace and justice for all. Fuck that. Not in this house. Religion is not necessary for that. So I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not going to answer whether or not I would rather live in an Islamic or a Christian country, because I don't think we need religion in the first place. And also, that question here in the United States is a setup so that I then say, well, obviously Christian, so that then you can paint Islam as this entity, and it's probably going to get into saying things like all Muslims this or all Arabs that, which is built into a white supremacist narrative that, again, Western civilization, what you're probably calling Christianized states, profit from, built into the exploitation of people of color around this world. Great question. I'm not answering it. Great question. I'm not going to fucking answer it. Twitch chatter, I'm going to respond to you again. I'm not going to get into as much depth, but I see that you're trying to hold on to the narrative that you have been taught about what you're calling Protestant work ethic. So I'm going to touch on this, and I'm trying to be, trying to show up in good faith here. I'm trying to be real with you. You say, why do you think the countries fundamentally based on Protestant work ethic are all developed economically, morally, and lawfully. The rest just copied or followed suit after the modern day industrial revolution since the 1960s, because Protestant work ethic is what helped build basically every right, lawful, and moral thing in this world. Okay, so the reason I'm not going to get into as much stuff is because I literally just explained to you that, first of all, let's do all three. That economic development that you're talking about, even the Industrial Revolution in this country, in the United States, was not possible without exploiting people. Exploiting people. Do you understand that concept? Do you know what exploitation means? It means people who are making decisions and who are reaping the benefits of someone else's labor, of someone else's work. So that's why before the Haymarket riots and before the labor movement really organized, people were working here in this country, in this supposedly moral and right country. We're just gonna do the United States. Okay, for a small microcosm of what we're talking about here. Before the labor movement really took off and we got the 40-hour work week and the 8-hour day, right? People were working 12-hour days, 6 days a week. That is exploitation. That is when these people are working for like $1 an hour. That's an exaggeration. $6 an hour, whatever the fuck it was. Okay. Meanwhile, they were working in these factories in order for their bosses to make thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, whatever it may be, whatever industry they were in. That is what exploitation means. And yes, you are correct in that it resulted in an economically developed country, which is to say that the ruling elites that I assume you're frustrated with, because everyone is frustrated with, no matter what political party they fall under, no matter what religion they fall under, everyone is pissed off at the aristocracy in this country, the people who have billions of dollars, who are still exploiting people on our level, your and my level. Look, you and I are on the same fucking tier of society here, okay? Unless you somehow have $1 billion and you're hanging out in my fucking Twitch chat, I would be shocked, honored, but shocked. Like you and I are the same, okay? So I'm not coming at you to fight you right now, but you've got to understand, when you say this country was developed economically, correct, it was developed economically on the basis of exploitation, on the basis of people working 12-hour fucking days, back-breaking labor, 6 days a week so that other people can take their work and profit from it. That is what capitalism does. That is what Western society built itself on. And that's not even to talk about the ways outside of this country that exploitation was happening. We're just focusing on here. So you say that it developed economically here, and while that may be true, it did not. This is key, babe. It did not develop economically for everyone. It developed economically for the people in power. That's it. That's it. And I will recognize that on the whole, there are studies that show on the whole throughout the globe, okay, or let's just stick with the United States. On the whole in the United States, the people, the millions of people in this country are, like, for example, more literate than our ancestors even just 300 years ago, right? Like, there are some ways that society has progressed, but at the same time, if you don't include this other part of the conversation, you are being lied to, you are being manipulated, you don't understand the full story. At the same time, the wealth inequality gap, the gap between the richest and the poorer people, 300 years ago when people weren't as well read, that gap was like this. Now people might be able to read more. That gap is like this, babe. Do you understand that wealth inequality, the gap is rising? That gap is rising because it is still predicated on exploitation. Again, the profit of someone else's labor. That is what is happening. That is how we developed economically. I guess I am getting into it. Okay. So based on that concept, how can you say that with this Protestant work ethic, how can you say that form of labor, that form of an economy, profiting off of the exploitation of profiting off of the backs of other people, how can you call that moral? How can you say that is a more moral society? It breaks down, babe. It breaks down. It breaks down. And as far as lawfully goes, the third thing you said, that Protestant work ethic are all developed economically, morally, and lawfully. As far as lawfully goes, people create laws. People create laws. And then, because laws have to evolve with us, people have to change the laws. You want to talk about morality again? Guess what used to be legal? Slavery of people, of human beings. That was lawful. That was lawful. Do you understand? Women not getting the right to vote, that was lawful. Babe, I'm not trying to call you stupid. I'm not trying to call you an idiot, because I grew up with that same messaging about Protestant work ethic being the foundation of everything right, lawful, and moral. I got the same messaging. I feel you, hun. I understand that it's hard to question that narrative that you've probably been told your entire life, but it is so sad when I see people, God, in the environment, oh my God, with the beliefs that I was raised in. Oh, babe, the concept of Western society being the moral foundation that other people copied, like, God has save us all if that's the fucking case, because I do not stand by the morality of this country, of Western society, of what the fuck ever you really think is that great. I absolutely not. I'm not available.